to another deep dive edition of the Chicks on the Ride podcast. We are so stoked today because we have with us the gorgeous and brilliant and talented former Assistant Secretary of Treasury and host of the Monica Crowley podcast, Monica Crowley. Thank you for being with us.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much. And I just had you guys on my podcast and I could not wait to talk to you again. So thank you so much.
Super excited. Super excited.
And we will talk about the issues of the day for sure. But one of the things that we wanted to ask you about, since we always like to get a little bit personal with our guests, is just to kind of talk about your unbelievable career. You are a woman of many, many accomplishments, and it started very early for you. We read that you started your career really by writing letters to President Nixon. So we wanted to know what inspired you to do that, and then just give us the rundown of the amazing career you've had so far.
Well, thank you guys so much for the opportunity to, first of all, be here. And secondly, to talk about my early career, because I did start work with President Nixon right out of college. Of course, he was former president then. And I always relish the opportunity to talk about the great man, as us Nixon hands called President Nixon, the great man. So, I was in college and I was studying political science, and I had the typical poli-sci courses like on Congress and the presidency and everything. And it was all really interesting, which is why I made it my major. But I noticed in the spring of my junior year that there was a new course on the Colgate University syllabus called National Security. And I saw it, and it was to be taught by a professor who was going to be new to the campus that semester. And I said, well, let me check out this course. Let me see what it is. So I enrolled in the course. I absolutely loved the material. It was American national security and American foreign policy. And it was taught by a new professor who ended up being like one of the only conservative professors on the campus. And because I was pretty much the only conservative kid on the campus, he became a mentor to me.
Hey, did you know that MyPillow is having an enormous blowout sale? I just love that. Enormous blowout sale. It makes me so happy that they're blowing things out. It does. It makes me really happy because MyPillow, when MyPillow has a sale, I'm not walking, I'm running. I'm running to the sale. Okay. So I got 50% off MyPillow 2.0. They got 50% off the flannel sheets, which I am a flannel sheet girl. Even in Texas,
Same.
I have flannel sheets all year round, you guys. Seriously. You can take advantage of free shipping on the larger items, such as like mattresses, mattress toppers, if you guys need those. Huge sales going on right now. Plus, they have kitchen towels. Did you even know this?
That's right. They have kitchen towels.
They have those. Plus, they have dog beds. They have blankets. They have couch pillows. Like, everybody needs throw pillows. My husband would disagree, but he's wrong. So, totally wrong. So you guys need to take advantage of the blowout sale, the enormous blowout sale. And listen, support Mike Lindell, support MyPillow employees, support us. Do that. Go to MyPillow.
Yes.
Do it.
All you have to do is visit mypillow.com/chicks. And then don't forget to use code CHICKS. That's what will get you the deepest discounts and the free shipping. mypillow.com/chicks.
And so I fell in love with the material of national security, American foreign policy. And I was the only kid out of a class of about 70 that got an A+ in the course because I loved it so much. So I went to this professor at the end of the semester and I said, look, obviously, I think I'm pretty good at this and I really love it. And maybe I'll build a career out of this someday. So what do you suggest? And guys, he got up and he walked over to his bookcase and he pulled 4 books off the bookcase and he handed them to me. And he said, go home this summer, read these books. And when you come back in the fall for your senior year, we'll talk about what you learned and then how we can build out a career, whether it's State Department or CIA or Foreign Service or whatever it might be. So I got home and, of course, exhausted after the school year, full of studying and, partying. So I read 4 books that he gave me, and 2 of them were Kissinger's memoirs. Kissinger's memoirs are over 1,000 pages each. And I was like, oh, hell no. Hell no. I'm not studying with one of those. So I chose the slimmest one to start with, and it happened to be a book by President Nixon called 1999 Victory Without War. And, when President Nixon left after Watergate, he wrote his memoirs in 1978, but starting in 1980, Richard Nixon wrote a new foreign policy book every 2 years to keep up with how the world was changing, how America was changing, America's place in the world. So that was his most recent foreign policy book at the time. And guys, I read it and it completely blew me away. I could not put it down. It was like I was reading a novel. It was that fascinating to me. So I sat down and I wrote him a letter. And it was a letter that focused on the issues that he had raised in the book. How to deal with the fall of the Soviet Union, how to deal with China, how to deal with the Middle East, all of these issues. And I dealt with each issue. And then at the end of the letter, I said, Mr. President, I realize you must be a very busy man. But I would love the opportunity to meet you one day and pay my respects to you in person. And that was sort of a throwaway line. The reason I wrote the letter, guys, and I tell young people this all the time, the reason I wrote the letter was because that author, regardless of who he was, that author had written something that had educated me, had inspired me, had changed the way I thought about America and America's place in the world. It blew me away. So to me, it was almost like hand of God, because to me, I didn't have a choice not to write to him. I just felt like I needed to let this author know that he had really changed my life with this book. So I sent the letter off to him, care of his publisher and care of the post office where he lived in New Jersey. And guys, do you know he got both copies of my letter?
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God.
My letter came to him. And about a month later, I'd forgotten about the letter. I never expected a response. But about a month later, I'm getting ready to go back to Colgate for my senior year. And I go to my mom's mailbox to collect her mail for her before she got home from work. And I pull out a handwritten note from Richard Nixon to me.
Oh my gosh.
Keep in mind, I'm 20 years old. I have no money. I have no connections to a Republican Party or anything like that. I'm just a kid with a passion for foreign policy. So he wrote me this note and he said, call my office after Labor Day and we'll set up a mutually convenient time for you to come and meet me. So I went to go see him at the start of my senior year. He gave me an hour and a half of his time. Again, a nobody at the time, which was so generous of him. And then we kept up a correspondence until I graduated the following May. And that's when he offered me a job. And I ended up working for the last 4 years of his life until he passed away in 1994.
That is just fantastic.
Wow.
I love that story.
What a story.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And then the fact that you worked in politics, that you knew what you wanted to do, because, Mock and I got into politics when we were, in our 30s, but the fact that you knew you wanted to do politics when you were very young is quite impressive, because I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up until yesterday. So, and I'm definitely not.
I know what I want to do.
This is the thing. So it's quite impressive. But I mean, I'm sure you've seen lots and lots of changes over the past, 20, 30 years in politics, right? I mean, what would you say are the biggest changes that you've seen in the political spectrum, the political world over the past?
And is it dirtier now than it ever has been, or has it always been this dirty?
Yeah.
Well, that is a great question. And you know what, guys, it really has been always this dirty, because this is human nature. So you can go back to Adam and Eve in the garden with the snake to know that I think human beings are generally good. But politics, because it's all about power and the access to power, attracts a lot of people who are corrupt or can be easily corrupted. Not everybody, obviously, but there's a reason why when Jesus was in the desert, Satan took him up to the mountaintop and tempted him with all of the kingdoms of the world. And obviously, Jesus didn't fall for it, but we've got a lot of human beings here who fall for that temptation because power is so attractive. So if you go back to the beginning of the Republic, the founding fathers, many of them were at each other's throats. And of course, even back then, you had a corrupt press with caricatures and sliming each other in the press, and the press more than willing to engage in it. So it's sort of always been this way because of the nature of power. And the United States is not alone in this. Every nation has this kind of corruption and power plays and everything else.
Maybe
over the last...
I'm sorry. I was just going to say maybe it just seems worse because of the fact that we have access to social media and we see it more. It's like I feel like it's in our laps more. And then like in the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, it's like we didn't know it, and what we didn't know didn't affect us. It's like we were blind to a lot of the corruption. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think with social media and all these massive platforms that are very good in many ways, that we can communicate with each other now as conservatives and populists. America First can do shows like this. My podcast, we have access to a lot of different avenues now that are very good because it makes us feel like we're not alone. We're not out there thinking we're crazy because we're so isolated. Now we have all these platforms and real communities out there where we didn't before. But we're also now hyper aware of the kinds of corruption and the abuses of the Uniparty. Your question about how has politics changed over the last couple of decades. I think we didn't know what we didn't know. And we were being fed candidates that were part of the Uniparty, not all of them, obviously, but, candidates, let's say like JFK or Richard Nixon or Ronald Reagan, not necessarily beholden to the deep state. Okay. And we saw then what the deep state did to them because they could be controlled. I think so many of us now are more awake to where the actual power lies in this country. I don't know about you guys, but I grew up I came of age when Ronald Reagan was in office. And so instinctively, what he was saying struck me as correct. So I became a conservative and have remained so, and then worked with President Nixon in his last years. We now, I think, have a clear understanding that the real power in this country is not in the White House, regardless of who's there, or on Capitol Hill, or the Supreme Court, or governor's mansions. No, the real power is with these shadowy, unelected technocrats, globalists, uniparty representatives that are outside of the electoral process that really control all of the levers of power. And if you try to challenge them or stand up to them in any way, they will destroy you.
Yep.
That's all the stuff of going against President Trump and the January 6th nonviolent defendants. These are messaging events, guys. The message is don't even try it because we will destroy you. If not, straight up take you out, like they did to JFK, right? So now I think more and more people are coming to that understanding. And I would say that is the biggest overall change.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
So let's talk about the election a little bit, because obviously this is going to be the craziest election year that we will have ever seen ever, probably. And Nikki staying in inexplicably. She is hanging on in there and she wants to stay. So now what I know that you're very loyal to Trump. You're a Trumper through and through. I have not been, just full disclosure. I have been a DeSantis girl until now, because obviously DeSantis is out. And so I'm all, let's rally behind Trump now and let's get this done. However, I have huge concerns about his ability to appeal to independents and to, some of the comments that he's made about people like Kayleigh McEnany, for example. It makes me crazy. What do you say to people like me or people who, unlike me, don't plan to vote for Trump because they cannot tolerate that behavior? How do you get them on board? And more importantly, how do you get him to be more into bringing them on board instead of alienating them?
It's a great question, and it's a completely legitimate concern. And I say this as somebody who knew Donald Trump when I was in New York. I consider him a friend of mine, as well as one of the greatest presidents we've ever had. So I understand your concern, and I don't necessarily disagree with the basic premise that, Trump's mouth, while it is very effective in a lot of ways, like putting Putin on notice and the Chinese Communist Party on notice and terrorist groups on notice, it also domestically can sometimes turn people off. So I understand that. A couple of things here. First of all, you will notice in the last couple of weeks, and certainly this week after New Hampshire, Donald Trump is beginning to soften his tone a bit because he's now running a general election campaign against Biden and Harris or whomever the Democrats might end up nominating. You will notice there is a shift in tone. Now, if you are coming at him as a competitor, like a DeSantis or a Nikki Haley, and in particular, if he has given you a real once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, like he did to Nikki Haley at the UN, and you turn around and run against him, he will destroy you. So he will take you out. Man will cut you. Okay?
Yeah.
But if he is now running a general election, he's going to turn all of his fire on Biden, Harris, the rest of the Democrats, et cetera, and take them out. So you've started to see a slight shift in tone. While Haley is still in, he's still going to attack her to take her out. It's funny because my mom is totally MAGA. She loves Trump. But she was like, Monica, the name calling is a little, and I was like, well, what do you mean? And she's like, well, calling Ron DeSantis, who is the best governor in the country.
Right.
There are some good ones. He's the best. But she was like, well, to call him, DeSanctimonious. And I said, well, Mom, it worked, right?
It worked.
Ron DeSantis is out. It worked, right? And
Yeah.
I completely shut her up. So she gets it. But to your bigger point, there is now a shift in tone. He's starting to soften some of his language, be more conciliatory to Ron DeSantis and others who have now left the race, right? He's got Vivek on stage with him. He's got Tim Scott on stage with him.
All right. So Genucell has a new product out, and it's called Gen 90. And you can use it under your eyes, kind of like the immediate effects stuff that I use the immediate effects stuff like every single day because we're up at the crack of dawn with the roosters. But the Gen 90 stuff, I'm using it on my forehead. I'm using it on my laugh lines. I'm using because basically I'm becoming the crypt keeper. So in order to not become the crypt keeper, I don't have that beautiful Polish skin like you naturally. I gotta fight it with Genucell. So this stuff is miraculous. I don't know what they did. They're like leaps and bounds ahead of immediate effects. But this stuff, just like that's the sound effect.
It's tingly. It's tingly and cold.
It's It's so amazing. It's like when I say it's instant wrinkle treatment, it is. And so I put it on my forehead, and it's fantastic because I have like major forehead lines. It's awesome stuff. You guys have got to try
this. The best part is that it's included now in the most popular package for over 70% off. And it's free shipping on all orders when you go to Genucell.com/chicks. That's GENUCEL.com/chicks. Make sure to use code chicks and get more than 70% off their most popular package, chock full of all your favorites. And they throw in the Gen 90. So check it out today, Genucell.com/chicks.
And he understands that there are certain constituencies now that are problematic for him, like suburban women, right? So there's languaging that's changing. There's tone that's changing. He's still going to be tough on law and order, the border, the economy, bringing back jobs, manufacturing, trade, China, all of this. He's going to remain really tough. But the languaging is going to be different. And I would also say in terms of suburban women, he is also going to put more of a focus on the culture wars, drag queen story hour for little kids. He's really going to go at that. He has been talking about it, but because Ron DeSantis really had that kind of corner during the primary, he didn't focus as much. But that is going to be a big appeal to women and suburban voters, etc. And my final point on this, to people who, and I see this on social media, they're just like, oh, I just can't get with Trump. His style, he's too, crazy or chaotic or whatever it might be. I can't get with them. My argument to those folks is this: the country is hanging by a thread.
Right.
We are at a tipping point after decades of a Marxist revolution to change the very nature of this country, destroy her from within, and take her in a fundamentally different direction where you essentially will be a serf, okay, to the globalists and the communists who are going to end up running this country. I will take a few mean tweets. I will take a few bits of name calling when the country's very future and survival is at stake. Those are the stakes. So do not let a petty concern about Trump's style or his tweets or whatever block you from seeing the big picture. We will not have a country left for your children and your grandchildren if Donald Trump is not elected in November.
And I can have no issue getting on the Trump train out of the two of us. That the thing that concerns me is I personally don't believe that Biden will be their candidate. I have this thing in the back of my mind, and I hope I'm wrong. I really do hope I'm wrong. But I think when push comes to shove, because there's no way that Biden can't even walk at this point. He has no idea where the hell he is every day at this point. But so I look at that and I think, okay, I think we've got a long road ahead of us before the general. Something's going to happen. This is just my prediction. And like I said, I hope I'm so wrong about this, but my prediction is that something's going to happen. They're going to slip somebody in like a Gavin Newsom and be like, okay, this is our guy now, because they don't follow the rules like we follow the rules. And they're going to slip him in there, and then it'll be like a Newsom versus Trump. And in that case, I don't know if we're capable of winning a general. I just don't know if we have it in the bag at that point. That's what concerns me. What are your feelings on that? Go.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it really keeps me up at night too, guys. I really worry about this because, look, I've always felt that if the left's power brokers, namely Barack and Michelle Obama,
yes,
who are running the party and running this White House as well, this is Obama 3.0, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they felt like they did in 2020 with the pandemic, that they could leverage something or create something like they did with the pandemic, create a situation where they could keep Biden in the basement like they did last time, and without really showing the American people and the world who he is and really put him out there, they would do that because he is such a useful puppet to them. And this is why he was installed in the first place, because he's so controlled, because he's being blackmailed and extorted by the Chinese. And I mean, he is just a vessel for them, right? Mm-hmm. So I've always thought if they could pull that off again, they would. And I think we're reaching the moment of truth here for them, where they need to make that decision, either fish or cut bait with Joe Biden. Are we going to run him? Can we get away with it again? Are we going to launch Disease X, like what was talked about at the World Economic Forum, to keep him in the basement again? Can we pull that off? The moment of truth for them is at hand. I'm not sure which direction they're going to go, but like you, I suspect in the end, they're not going to run him. But then they've got a huge problem because, number one, they have to get rid of him. And he and Jill, Dr. Jill, really want to stay. So they're going to figure out how to move him aside. And maybe the Hunter Biden prosecutions will allow him an off-ramp, like, oh, I care about my son, got to spend more time with him, whatever. Kamala is a different story because Kamala is, there are all these books coming out now saying that she and Biden really don't have a relationship. And so, but she really wants to be president. So getting rid of her actually could be more difficult than getting rid of Joe. Now, it could be, and we're going to talk about Kari Lake and that situation, it could be that they offer Kamala so much money to get out that she just takes it and they buy her off in some way, or give her a lateral move to the Supreme Court, whatever. Mm-hmm. But my biggest concern is that, the most devoted Democrat voters are Black women. So you can't piss them off if you're the Democrat Party. And if you bounce Kamala, you got to square that circle somehow. And the way you do that is by running Michelle Obama. And that is my gravest concern, because you mentioned Newsom. I think Trump could beat Newsom. I think it would be tough. but I think he can beat all the other Democrat possibilities. Michelle Obama is a different ball of wax.
Yeah.
You know, woman of color, Obama machine, all they have to do is throw a switch at the last minute. And then she's did as the reluctant candidate at the convention in August. So she's not being beaten up over these next 7 or 8 months. She can just sort of waltz in as a candidate and only have to campaign a month or two. That is what worries me and keeps me up at night. So let's just pray that that does not come
Let
to
us
happen.
absolutely pray that does not happen. Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So, and you mentioned Kari Lake, so we should absolutely address what's happening because she's obviously running for Senate despite the bribes, wherever those came from. And then she's also a potential VP pick, I suppose. And so too is Nikki Haley, which is amazing to me that she gets thrown around as a potential VP pick. What do you think about before we even talk about the bribery stuff, what do you think about who Trump is most likely to choose as his running mate? Because you know him personally. Out of all the choices, I can see the argument that, you know, Nikki would bring in maybe those moderates, those independent women, but so many people just don't like her. So where do you think his head is on a VP choice right now?
Yeah, you know, Nikki Haley is an op. Nikki Haley is a deep state uniparty op. And that is the point of her, as well as like Chris Christie when he was in the race, Asa Hutchinson. They're all operatives in this race to tear at Donald Trump, try to weaken him, drain his resources, keep him focused elsewhere. She is an op, but she is like a uniparty deep state op. So all of these billionaires until New Hampshire, we're putting all of this money into her to try to use her, weaponize her as a vessel against Donald Trump. So in the VP question, a lot of those same folks who now realize that Nikki Haley does not have a path to the nomination, never mind the presidency, are trying to keep her in this race so she accrues delegates as we go through this process, so that it's sort of a fait accompli by the time we get to the convention. Oh, look, Nikki Haley has all these delegates. She will transfer them to Donald Trump, but only on the condition that she's chosen as vice president. That is not going to happen. I can tell you there is no way that Donald Trump is going to choose Nikki Haley as the VP. And it's for many reasons. Number one, she was incredibly disloyal to him, and he really values loyalty. So forget it. Secondly, he knows he cannot trust her. And in a second Trump term, no more never Trumpers, no more Obama holdovers, no more deep state operatives trying to undermine him. And that is her. So no, the deep state wants to install her as VP. So they have a spy in there working constantly to undermine him. That is not happening again. So forget Nikki Haley. She's not going anywhere. She can still do a lot of damage, but no. The VP mentioned Kari Lake. Love Kari Lake. She is a friend of mine. She is certainly in the mix, I would think, but I think she is focused on the Senate race. So it's possible that she and President Trump had a conversation and he said, look, focus. I need you in the Senate when I'm president. I need so many America Firsters there. Go there and do that. But I think he probably thinks he needs a woman, because he's going to end up running either against Biden-Harris or Harris as president, God forbid, or Michelle Obama. So I think he probably thinks he needs a woman. I don't know if that's correct or not, but I think that's where his thinking is. And so you've got people like Kristi Noem, Stefanik, who are in the mix. Kari Lake, again, also is a possibility. And then he's got people like, Byron Donalds, Tim Scott, really solid Republicans of color that he can trust. Vivek is in the mix as well. It's going to be very interesting to see where he goes. I will say one thing about all presidents on either side. They do not want to choose somebody who might eclipse them as a superstar. And especially when we're talking about Donald Trump. In Donald Trump's universe, there is only one star, and that's Donald Trump. So Vivek, to me, is a natural heir to the America First movement. He is sensational. I would love to see him on the debate stage with Kamala Harris. Wouldn't that be something?
Oh my God, it'd be sensational. Yeah.
But because he's so charismatic, it might be that Trump doesn't want to necessarily have to compete with his VP in a way. So I don't know. This is sort of an unspoken thing for all presidential candidates, but keep that in mind when we're looking at the field.
Yeah, my money's on Kristi Noem for VP. I kind of, that's at least where my head is at. I feel like we've talked about balance. And I think when you mentioned the fact that he wants to be like you don't want somebody who's going to outshine you. I totally think that Kristi Noem would be such a fantastic VP. I really think
she really would. Yeah.
And bringing the women. Yeah, bringing that female vote. I think it'd be great. So I don't even know who you are anymore because you're cooking so much at home. And I suspect the reason why you're cooking so much at home is because you're basically afraid to leave your house because of all the terrorism and the flights and whatnot. You never leave your house. So naturally, what you're doing is you're ordering a crap ton of Omaha steaks and you're learning to cook. So I'm like, who are you?
I mean, I feel like you and I were already probably some of their favorite customers because we do like to get us some Omaha steaks a lot. But
I do.
Now it's true. I've ramped it up because I don't like going out. I just don't like going out.
You're like, I got snapper and I have this recipe, and I'm like, what are you even saying right now? What are you?
I know. Well, because I've discovered that in addition to the best fillets and like tenderloin, all the best steaks that you've always come to know and expect from Omaha Steaks, I did not realize until recently that their seafood is also amazing. And so I've been stocking up. And tonight I am preparing for the first time ever. So wish me luck.
Here we go.
Swordfish.
What?
I know. I have no idea how to do it, but I'm going to do it, man. I'm going to do it.
She's going to be like, and it had this amazing sauce. And I braised it with something. I'm gonna have spices and sauce, and I'm making it with another Omaha Steak side, the pepper jack risotto cakes. Oh my God.
And so I'm super stoked to try those.
Their sides their sides are fire, as the kids would say. They are bomb.com. They're so amazing. So listen, you're going to love every bite, you guys. They have a guarantee. And for a limited time, go to omahasteaks.com/chicks. Get 4 free boneless chicken breasts and 4 free boneless pork chops with your order. So, I mean, you cannot go wrong. You get all the things. You get seafood and all these things. Go to omahasteaks.com/chicks. omahasteaks.com/chicks.
So what do you think is going to happen with the Kari Lake hullabaloo? Because of course the guy Jeff DeWitt resigned, which was expected, but we were talking in our podcast this morning. Okay, well, so now what? I mean, is that it? Like, are we going to find out who did the bribing? Like, this can't just end with the resignation, can it?
Yes.
I know, you guys, right? It's so crazy because we know this stuff goes on. We talked about how politics has always been because of human nature. So you kind of know in the back of your mind that this stuff goes on, but when it's right in your face, recorded on tape, it's like, wait a minute, what? What just happened here? Look, I think we are going to get the truth. And it is starting to bubble up that Steve Daines, who is out of, I think it's Minnesota or Montana, he's a senator in charge of the Republican National Senatorial Committee, which is in charge of drafting candidates and raising money for them. And it's starting to bubble up. He gave a denial the other day, but it's starting to bubble up that he and Mitch McConnell are behind this because they want to recruit uniparty, non-threatening, non-MAGA candidates for the Senate. And this is probably true for the House too, but certainly in the Senate. And so it's starting to, we're starting to get a little bit of evidence here that in fact, all roads lead to McConnell and Daines. They ought to be ashamed of themselves.
Yep.
It's absolutely disgusting. I mean, the corruption right in your face, but it speaks worlds of character and integrity of Kari Lake that she was like, no, I can't be bought. What are you kidding me? I'm here for the people of Arizona, people of the country. So good on her that she didn't take the bait. But guys, so many of them do. This is why, you see candidates who lose, whether it's a clean election or not, but they lose. And then they kind of just fade away. They disappear.
And make a lot of money.
Okay, I'll accept the results of this election and then just slink off because they're paid to slink off.
Yep.
They're bribed to slink off, and this is how deep the corruption is on both sides of the aisle.
Gross.
So gross. It is. It's really gross. I mean, like you said, you know what's going on, but then when you see it, you're like, why do I have to look at this? Yeah. It's like a total train wreck. It's like, oh God, it is. It's so disgusting. It really is. So like on that vein, I'm curious, what is it? We'd love to hear some dirt. Like, is there, because we've met people in politics that we've been, quote, friends with, and then they get into office and they become a complete and utter disappointment to us as human beings. And also as politicians
and leaders,
because they become sort of in line with the deep state, I guess, kind of like what you describe it as. So I'm curious if if you would even share some like a story of maybe somebody or just something that has been a huge disappointment to you, or something that's been surprising to you, or I'm sure that you've seen your share over the past however many years you've been doing this of just disappointments and stuff that you go, what was that?
Yeah, I mean, this is true in politics as in life, right? That people will always let you down. So when people deliver for you, it's like a pleasant surprise. Like, oh, wow. But in politics, because it's all so gross and slimy, I have to say maybe the biggest disappointment, actually two really big disappointments. One, Reagan, who I loved and met, a couple of times through President Nixon. But Reagan's 1986 immigration deal that he worked with Ted Kennedy really opened the floodgates of this modern illegal immigration crisis in this country. So I think that was a big letdown. And then I will say, like, even more personally than that, Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney has been an absolute disappointment, uni-party nightmare. And actually, I'll go back to 2012 and get my vote back for him. But, all of us, and then there are Supreme Court justices like Amy Coney Barrett, John Roberts, people that we have gone to the mat for over so many years to try to get these people elected or confirmed, and then they just turn their back on you. I will say, I don't know if you guys have been following the Madison Cawthorn sort of exposés, but he was a member of Congress. He's disabled. He uses a wheelchair. During an accident, spinal accident. He's no longer in Congress, which frees him up to actually tell the truth. And he was saying that, like, so many of our elected representatives are compromised. So, they're honeypotted, so they're being blackmailed over sexual escapades or financial escapades or whatever. So, I was sort of joked that when these people got into office, the men in black show up on day one, knock on the door,
with the thing. Yeah.
It was so cute. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. It was so cute that you thought you were going to come to Washington and actually represent your constituents who elected you. That's adorable. Now you work for us. And if you disagree, here's our dossier of everything you've ever done bad in your life. You've committed. And so these people just flip. And to me, that is the most sickening thing to realize. And maybe this is, look, I don't have any evidence about John Roberts on the court or, Mitt Romney or whatever, but something is going on with these people. And maybe it's just sheer greed. They're getting big payouts from the Chinese Communist Party or whatever it might be. But to sell out your constituents, to sell out the country, even and especially at this late date when the country is hanging by a thread, is disgusting. And frankly, guys, it's evil. This is a spiritual war, and it's God versus Satan or good versus evil, however you want to characterize it. But when you realize there's a spiritual dimension to this, and you are on that other side, or your elected representatives are on the other side, it just makes it infuriates me, but it also makes my hair stand up because, I want to be on the right side of this battle. I don't know about you.
Absolutely.
Well, and let's hope that we can rally because we ever need to.
Yeah. Yep.
Monica, thank you so much for your time today. We can't wait to do this again because I feel like we could go on for like 3 or 4 more hours because we still haven't even touched the border. I mean, there's so much we could talk to you about.
Yes.
But we want to be respectful of your time, and we appreciate you taking the time to be on our show so much. Thank you.
Oh, it was a great pleasure, guys. Thank you so much. Always so much fun to be with you. So call me anytime.
Thanks,
Absolutely.
Monica.
Thank you.